Welcome, I'm Kinetic Symphony. This is Dave. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the supernatural. Case file number 1807, written by Fractal Jester 333. A hidden design, clear and fair. The instant I knew of the podcast bear. This will be short, but keep in mind, there's no words to describe the profundity of how I felt when this happened to me the other day. Also, I've had many glitches and synchronicities and events in my life that have proven to me beyond a doubt that there's a hidden design behind the fabric of reality. But this one was a big one for me because I hadn't had one in a while, and it happened just a few days ago. Okay, so, as simple as it sounds, I was walking downstairs, and as I entered the kitchen, a family member was doing something with food on the counter, and said something extremely specific, and I had my phone in my hand. In that moment, I immediately knew that if I looked at my phone, I was going to see something to do with a podcast and the topic being bears. As specific as that sounds, I should not have known this information. This was a complete gnosis without evidence of the totality of the simulation in that moment. And that totality included this extremely specific data point of the podcast bear. I look down and unlock my phone, and as my YouTube feed refreshes, the first thing that's right there is a podcast with a picture of a grizzly bear. In that moment, the world stood still because I could not have physically known that. It was impossible, and yet I knew it. Case notes for file 1807. A hidden design, clear and fair. The instant I knew of the podcast bear. So I just want to say the thumbnail for this one was fun. It's one of those funny stories where you can create a thumbnail that is just humorous, a bear singing, or in this case, just having a podcast. I would listen to that. A lot of grunts and roars, but okay, bring it on. Isn't it funny though, how our subconscious mind can peer into the universe's surroundings and infer information, perhaps future information, but my guess is there was some clue, some minor sign in that environment that indicated that maybe this podcast recommendation would be a bear, would involve a bear. Maybe your family member, your brother, whoever it was listening to this podcast before, and because you're on the same Wi-Fi, that's why it was popping up in your suggested feed. Now, that wouldn't explain why you knew. Your mind somehow knew it would be there. Maybe at some point, hours before, he mentioned something about a bear, and that's why your mind went there. It was like an educated guess. I don't know. It might be even deeper than that. The subconscious has a lot of tendrils out there in the universe, gathering little bits of information that we aren't aware of. So, whatever it is, it's pretty cool. And I'm now pretty curious what that podcast was. Case file number 1808, written by A.B. Gry, Krakow 84. A knock, a leak, and a grandfather's streak. When I was like 16 or so, my parents went out of town for a week and left me at home by myself. Which wasn't a big deal, as I knew how to take care of myself and was a responsible kid. No parties or anything. I had my own car and a job, plus school. And I knew if there was an emergency, I could call any number of people who could help. Overall, it was just a chill week, nothing special going on. Except one day, I get home from school and the toilet is running. I was so confused as I knew I hadn't even used the toilet on that day. There was nobody else who could have been there. I couldn't get the toilet to stop running. Thankfully, it wasn't flooding anything. So I just turned the water off and made a note not to use it and tell my parents when they got back. Like 30 seconds after I do that, I hear a knock on the door. I look outside and see my grandfather there. Mind you, this is all happening within 5 minutes of me arriving home as well. I answer the door and say hi. He asks me if everything is okay. I say yeah and mention I just turned off the water on the toilet. He was acting a bit awkwardly, and I know he had no reason to come to the house. He never came over unless he was invited, and there was certainly no reason for him to be there this time. He said he had to go and then drove away. Later on, I told my mom about the whole thing. I figured she asked him to come over and check up on me or something. However, it's been 20 years since then, and to this day, she still denies any of that, and she had no idea why he was there. I tried asking him myself, and he claims he had no idea what I was talking about. So my mystery is, what the hell was my grandfather doing at the house that day, and why doesn't he remember? Case answer file 1808. A knock, a leak, and a grandfather's streak. You know those reels on Instagram and TikTok where it's a dad or sometimes a grandpa, if their kid needs help with some renovation or repair, and the dad shows up and, he has his tool belt on, and he steps out of the car with swag and, swings the hammer. Now it's his time to shine. Kind of get that vibe, like somehow, I don't think this was your grandpa. I think it was his soul that split off, because somehow he knew you needed help, but yet wasn't sure what it was, and I mean, this was just his soul that was there, not really him. That's why he didn't remember when you asked him, because when the soul returns, it doesn't bring the memories. It doesn't have a brain, it's just a soul manifesting corporeally. So I think that's what it is. Your grandpa was called to you because you had an issue that needed fixing, but it was just a soul, so he couldn't directly help. Pretty wholesome, I'd say. Case file number 1809, written by Schizario. Miles covered in the blink of an eye. The teleports that make us question why. Something really strange has been happening lately, and I know I'm not crazy, because friends of mine have experienced this with me on 2 separate occasions. I swear I'm teleporting across town somehow. This has happened to me 3 times, and it's seriously starting to freak me out. It happened for the 3rd time less than an hour before I started writing these words. I was riding in my friend's car back to my place from a movie theater on the opposite side of town. A trip that would normally take around 15 minutes. It took us 5, and I noticed what had happened almost immediately. But I didn't want to say anything until my friend, we'll call him E, did too, out of fear of sounding crazy. On the drive, we randomly ended up downtown, close to my place, much sooner than we should have. The transition is so seamless that I can't tell the difference until I see man-made landmarks like buildings. E mentioned that he didn't make any turns that he'd normally have to in order to get there. We just ended up there. We weren't distracted by conversation or anything, and the both of us were stone cold sober. Then I started to freak out a little bit. I told him about the other 2 experiences like that I'd had. More on those later. We made it to my place and decompressed for a bit before he left. In the car, I told E about the other 2 events like that I had experienced. The very first time I had something like that happen, I was walking to a gas station to grab a snack after work, and somehow ended up walking on a street a mile down the road. No time had passed at all, and I know this because I check my watch fairly often. The second experience was the most drastic of all 3. I was in the car with another friend of mine, we'll call him Jay, and we were on our way to a Walmart a 30-minute drive away from his place one morning. We ended up getting there in 10 minutes. We took a turn into this more scenic road in my state, Virginia, which would be a straight path to North Carolina. Instead of us going towards North Carolina, we ended up on a very similar road much closer to Walmart within a matter of seconds. The transition was nearly unnoticeable until I saw buildings I recognize from the part of town the Walmart is in. That experience freaked me out too. I have no clue what's going on, and to be honest, I'm really scared. I don't know what's happening, and I want to find out. Another thing that happens, and this has been consistent all 3 times, is that I, along with E and J, get these horrible burning sensations in our lower chests. Standing up after an experience like this feels like a burden, and walking around is awkward and clumsy. All 3 times I've had this happen, I, along with E and J, have been completely sober. Case answer file 1809. Miles covered in the blink of an eye. The teleports that make us question why. So we have a classic space-time portal story where people are zipping across different locations seamlessly, and that's always the word used or described. There's no transition. You don't realize it's happening until after it happened. And then you notice you're a place that you shouldn't be already. You're there too quick. One note that is very different from any story I've read regarding space-time portals is describing an adverse reaction to it. Normally people don't feel anything at all. But you, E and J, all had this burning sensation in your stomach and a sense of uneasiness that I've never heard before. So is this something else than a space-time portal? Could it be your own body generating a space-time portal? But even then, why would E and J feel anything then, if it's the same sort of space-time portal as everyone else crosses into when they're driving, usually when they're driving? I don't know, that's an anomaly I don't have an answer for, but very interesting to note. Now time for the quote of the day. Captain Marco Ramius. In the end, there is no escape. There is no escape from the past. What is our character? What is our personality, our memories? They are the history of our life. We are what we did. Now we can change it, we can try to alter the influence of the past, but there's no escaping it. It is with you. Every choice you've made, good or bad, will always be there. Your mind can sometimes rewrite history, but it doesn't change what did happen. So try not to let your mind do that too much. And it's actually it's a very good reason to keep a diary, even just jotting down important things that happened. So you have a concrete, immutable record of your own life. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.